Good late afternoon, everybody. This is just a quick audio test before we start. And have I selected the right screen? I have selected the right screen. Yes, good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining me. Welcome to the Gaming Rules live monthly Q&A. The music is so Paul. Yes, it's interesting, Tony, because I picked that music when I started this like 6 years ago, and it was only ever intended to be just a temporary placeholder, but I liked it at the time. And then after about 2 years, I started thinking I really must change this music now, because it's kind of like, it's just a bit rock and roll and it's not really suited to the channel. However, as time has gone on, I now can't change it because everybody now knows it as the theme music. So yes, anyway, yes, thank you very much for joining me. It's assertive and bold, like your vocal stylings. Cool, so the way this is going to go tonight, we're going to be here for about an hour and a half. I've been asked a number of questions in advance on my BGG guild. And I've also been asked a number of questions in advance on Facebook. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by going through all of the questions that I've been asked in advance. If you have any questions for me that you want to ask me right now, please can you hang fire? Because I'm going to do all of the other questions first, and then I'll get to the live questions later on. If you can't stick around though, and you do have any live questions, and you can't wait, do put them in the chat. Vicky's going to take a note of them and we'll add them onto the end. But for now, yeah, it's my theme song. But for now, let's go through the questions. So as I mentioned, I do have a guild on Board Game Geek. If you are on Board Game Geek, then please subscribe to the guild. Vicky's going to put a link in the chat now. There isn't much traffic on there, so don't worry about getting bombarded with information, but make sure if you join it that you also click subscribe. If you don't click subscribe, you will be a member of the guild, but you won't actually see any posts from there. So yes, make sure you subscribe so that you do actually get the notifications. As I say, there's not much chatter on there, but one of the things that I do a few days before each live Q&A is that I post and say, what questions have people got for me in advance? And the first question is from Phil Dennis. Perhaps I've been asked this before, if so, ignore it. Now, I'm not going to ignore it, but what is my favourite heavily thematic game? Now, Phil lists 3 of his favourite ones, which is Twilight Struggle, which I agree, 1989 Dawn of Freedom, which I've not played, and Brass Birmingham. Now, for me, a heavily thematic game, I've got a few, because I like my dry, boring Euros with no theme whatsoever, but I also do like games that are heavily thematic. And there's 2 that I'm going to mention here. And the first one is from purely a mechanical point of view, and this is Flamme Rouge. Flamme Rouge, for me, is a great game. It plays quick, it's simple to teach, it's a lot of fun. You can't really play it with a low player count, which is a little bit of an issue with the game, but with 4 or 5 people, or even 6, Flamme Rouge is fantastic. And the reason why I'm calling it thematic is because the game mechanisms actually fit with, I think, how it should work. Not that I've ever been a cyclist in the Tour de France, but I think the game mechanisms work well with the game, and it represents the fact that your rider is getting tired as the game goes on, and you get these exhaustion cards if you're ahead, and the way that the slipstreaming works, it just feels brilliant for me. At the moment though, if you're talking about heavily thematic, it's got to be Tainted Grail. Now, me and Vicky are currently in the middle of a Tainted Grail campaign. We played it again last night. We've just completed chapter 10 out of 15. And I know Tainted Grail has its issues. It has a few flaws with the game. We fixed those flaws with various house rules. Some of the house rules are official house rules, playing on story mode. But if you're talking about a thematic game, wow, absolutely love the whole setting, the narrative, just everything about that game. And I can't really talk about it that much because of spoilers, but it is a game set in sort of a dark, fantastical, Arthurian legend, but with weird mystical stuff going on. But yeah, the story, the way that the story is evolving, yeah, absolutely loving it. So at the moment, thematic game, definitely Tainted Grail. Right, Tony wants to know, and Tony is in the chat. Tell us a story from the days I played Magic the Gathering, which is when I first met Tony. So yeah, for those who don't know, I got seriously into Magic the Gathering in the mid to late 90s. It was around Ice Age time, which I think was 96, 95, 96. It was around that time. And it kind of took over my life. I used to do role-playing games, bits of board games, not the board games that I do now, but I did dabble a bit. I used to do war games. I used to do all sorts of different types of gaming. And then Magic the Gathering arrived and it took over. And I really got into it. And I played it solidly for years. In fact, I gave it up in about 99. And it feels like I'd been playing it longer. That, you know, it feels to me, because it totally took over and it you know, it encompassed 3 or 4 years of my life, that it feels like I played it longer. And now when I speak to people who've been playing it for 15, 20 years, it's like, oh yeah, I only dabbled a bit, but I have a lot of stories to tell. I owe a lot of my friends to Magic the Gathering because when I moved to a new area, I found the local club. And there's friends that I met through Magic the Gathering. So Simeon Jones, who I'm still friends with, he used to run the Birmingham Magic Club, which I was a member of when I moved there in 97. Met people like Tony, met Phil Pettifer, Richard Klein, a whole load of people that I am still friends with now. And that's all through Magic the Gathering. There's one story in particular, and I could tell lots and lots of stories, but there was one in particular, and this was when I was trying to qualify for the UK Nationals. Now, although I was seriously into the game, I was never that good at the game. I was okay at the game, but I can't build decks to save my life. And I wasn't actually that good as a player compared to the top players, but I was good enough to qualify for the Nationals a couple of times. And one of those times, I remember getting a car and driving from Blackpool all the way to, where was it? I think it was Leicester. And I picked up a couple of friends there. And then we drove to Cambridge because there was a qualifying round going on in Cambridge. And we took part in a day at Cambridge. And I think it was Tony Dobson, who is now a professional poker player. I think he was there with a new deck. Now, we did the thing that you're not really allowed to do at Magic tournaments, which was to sort of scout. But he was playing this new deck and it was doing really well. So we were kind of keeping a bit of an eye on it to see what it was. And it had elements in a deck that we'd already been working on. But it did some new cool stuff. And it was Mana War, and it was recursing knights and things like this, and Necrotal and 187 creatures and stuff like that. And we didn't do that well at this tournament, me and a friend of mine. I think there might have even been 3 of us. I can't quite remember. This is more than 20 years ago now. After the tournament had finished, this is 6 o'clock at night, we then drove all the way from there to, and I think it was Cardiff. I have a memory that it was Cardiff. It may not have been. It may have been Swindon or something like that. I can't quite remember. But we drove cross country. So this is from Blackpool to Leicester, from Leicester to Cambridge, from Cambridge over there, arrived in this hotel. And the reason we did this wasn't planned. It's because we didn't qualify. We didn't do that well that day. So we decided, shall we take part in the qualifier the next day? Where is it? Oh, it's in Cardiff. Yeah, let's go. We got in the car. We drove all the way. While we were driving, we were building decks and talking about decks and everything else. We arrived in the hotel, booked a hotel room for the evening. Obviously, there was loads of other players there. We were then trading for cards that night to see who had cards, and we threw together a deck. So on the Saturday night, there we were in the hotel bar, and we threw together, and we managed to make 2 copies of a deck, which was mostly based on what we'd seen somebody else play, which I know is bad, but that's what we did. And then the next day, we both entered this tournament, and we were both 4-0. So after 4 rounds, we were both undefeated, and there we were facing each other on the top table in round 5. And we both managed to make it into the top 8, and then we took part in the semis and we qualified for the Nationals. And it was just one of these things that was just like an amazing weekend, and then drove all the way back to Blackpool. I was absolutely shattered. Anyway, so that's that. And as I say, I've got more stories to tell, but that's definitely one that stuck in my mind. Right, okay. Nick wants to know, well, Nick's got 4 questions. Thank you, Nick. When do you think you'll be able to take a vacation? Is a good question. It's a very good question, yes. Would that essentially be a week of playing and streaming whatever game you wanted? So I won't go into too much details here about vacations, but I do have, it's not as easy as you think. I have various, what would I say? I've got mental blocks about going on vacation. Okay, it is a problem. It is something that I need to overcome. And you might think, well, that's just silly. Why don't you just go on holiday? Yeah, if it was that simple, I would have done it. Okay, so there's a few issues that I need to get over. And also, to be honest, if you were to say, Paul, you're taking an enforced 4 or 5 days off work, I would like to just stay at home at the moment. I would like to stay, especially when the weather's nice, stay at home, do a bit in the garden, and as Nick says, do some streaming of games that I want to play, do some playing of games that I want to play, and actually just enjoy myself here without the pressure of work. Because here I've got all of the comforts, I've got the cats, I've got everything around me that I need. Going on vacation means not having those things around me. So yeah, when do I think I'll be able to be? My plan is, because the way that this year has gone, it's not happened yet, but I'm hoping Christmas time to take a week off. Hopefully. Right. Does Vicky have any desire to join you in the videos? No. So Vicky's quite shy and quite nervous. Vicky's in the room with me now. She's waving. But no, Vicky won't be on camera. And in fact, we've actually done a couple of streams over weekends recently where we've been playing a computer game together. But Vicky doesn't want to be heard on the video either. So yeah, she's quite shy. She's not going to be on a video anytime soon. You can see her arms though. I've done some unboxing videos, not unboxing videos, assembly videos. So I've done a couple of videos for putting together some E-Raptor inserts, which are time-lapse videos, and Vicky's on those with me. Right, do I have any intention to play a game that viewers can join in as they watch? Roll and Writes or Karuba? Yes. So I've actually done a video for Tiny Towns. I did this a while back, which was one where you could play along at home. It wasn't that popular. Unfortunately, I was hoping it would be quite popular because people could play along at home, but for the amount of time and effort it took to put it together, it only got a few hundred views in the end, and I only had 3 people sending me their scores. However, I do have another game planned, and this is coming up in the next few weeks, and this is the new pinball game published by WizKids, designed by Jeff Engelstein, and it arrived, and I am doing a video on it, and I believe, from what I've been told, you can play along at home if you have a copy of the board. So I will be doing something like that. If you have any other ideas, obviously my Patreon supporters are very influential on the kind of content that I create, but if you are a Patreon supporter of mine and you say, Paul, here's a roll and write game that we can all play along at home, why don't you do this? Then give me those suggestions and I'm more than happy to do them. 4th question from Nick is, you seem to be doing a lot of collaborative videos. Are you going to continue to do them moving forward? Yes. So obviously lockdown has changed the way that I produce content. Instead of friends coming around on a Friday night and me live streaming it, I've been doing live streams with other people remotely. Some of those have just been friends. Some of them have been other content creators. I do plan on continuing doing that. I do want to start doing live streams from here with people coming around as soon as we're able to do that. Obviously, I did the Bora game with Dan a couple of weeks ago because we're keeping to the rules of only mixing one household at a time. But yeah, I plan on carrying on doing that as much as I can. Right, Eric S says, in your job as demo person for CGE, do I have a counterpart that focuses on non-English demos? So I don't actually have a counterpart in CGE. Obviously, I do the demos for CGE in the UK, and I also do a lot of demos for them online. So CGE have another virtual convention coming up at the end of this month where I'm going to be demoing Under Falling Skies and Lost Ruins of Arnak, and I'm going to be doing that all weekend again, like I did the previous weekend. So I don't have a counterpart that does it for non-English. But what I will tell you is that with my work for CGE, but for those who don't know, I have a particular style of demoing, which I worked on for a few years, and it is now the preferred method that I use for demoing games, specifically at conventions. And without going into details of this particular method, I firmly believe it is the best method for use when demoing somebody a game at a convention. And CGE were aware of this method, and I approached them probably a few years ago now, because I'd been using this method at Gen Con, and I was responsible for the demo team at Gen Con, not recently because I've stepped away from that role now, but certainly in the first 2 or 3 years that CGE were at Gen Con, all of the demo staff were working to my demo method. They'd all been trained, they'd all been sent documentation, they'd all had chance to practice it. We did demo runs the night before. And then I spoke to CGE, who organise Essen Spiel, and I said, look, we're now using this demo style for the entire of Gen Con and Origins and BGG Con. It kind of makes sense that CGE adopts it for their, European conventions as well. And I spoke to people at CGE and they decided that they would adopt it as well. So although I don't have a counterpart in CGE, it's nice that they have taken my demo style and they have now adapted it. Eric also wants to know, what did I do in my previous life before the board game industry? So I worked in IT. I worked in IT ever since I dropped out of university in 1988, and then did various IT jobs. I was a desktop support consultant, a network analyst. I worked on ICL mainframes, IBM mainframes, network engineer. And then eventually my final job was essentially sort of team leader for a desktop support team of 15 people and a lot of project management. And that was kind of the last 6 or 7 years of my career before I gave it up and went full-time into gaming rules. Question in from Steve. I'm going to get to the end of the BGG questions first and then we'll mention the contest. So question in from Steve Briscoe. Am I planning to do a playthrough of Eclipse Second Dawn for the Galaxy? Yes, absolutely. I have a copy of it. I did an unboxing video for it. It's on the list. And in fact, I should have done one by now. The reason I haven't done one by now is I can't imagine doing a playthrough of that game with people remotely. Okay, technically it is possible, but after the last couple of ones that I did, specifically thinking of Dead Reckoning, that was an absolute nightmare to do. Running the game, hosting the stream, playing along, focusing in on all of the different parts. It was, it needed 2 extra people here running the stream with 5 cameras set up, and it worked okay, but it was very, very stressful, and it was a lot of hard work. So I've written to Loud to Pellet this morning and said, we have 2 options for the Eclipse live stream. Do you want to do it remotely, or are you happy to wait until I'm allowed to have people around the house? So it's kind of with them. If they say, Paul, we'd really like you to do one in the next couple of weeks, then I will do one and we will somehow make it work. But yeah, I am planning to do one. And Steve Pritchard has put some comments in. Thank you, Steve. Now, Steve is one of my oldest friends. I've known Steve for... Right, when did I first meet Steve? So this is going back to play-by-mail games, okay? Before play-by-email became a thing. So this is going back to probably the early 90s now. Anyway, Steve got some questions in. What's the capital of Peru? I don't know. What's tastier, mice or iron filings? I don't know where he gets these questions from. Mice or iron filings? I don't know which is tastier because I've not tried either. We've had rabbit, haven't we? We've not had mice. And why does a dice need a 1 on it? I don't know. So yes, thank you, Steve, for the questions. If I had longer, I could probably think of witty answers to them. So the final question on the BGG Guild is from Scott Hill. Now, quite often when I get asked a question in these Q&As, I don't know the answer, so I put it over to the chat. Scott has specifically requested that I'm not allowed to throw this one over to the chat. He says, if I have to replace all instances of one type of game component with socks, which game component type would you choose and why? And I've decided that I'm going to replace the crystals in On Mars with socks. And if I was teaching the game to new players, I then wouldn't actually tell them. And basically I would describe the game and I'd explain the game and I would just call the crystals socks for the whole game and look at everybody's confused faces as to why they think it's socks. So yes, thank you very much for the questions in advance. And as I mentioned, BGG Guild number 2258, pop on there, subscribe. I am going to be posting a bit more stuff to that. But yeah, You can go on there. It's also a place where you can ask me various questions. I mean, I like to keep most of the questions for the live Q&A, but some of the questions that I get asked regularly, like what equipment do I use? That's all on the BGG Guild. And the BGG Guild is not just for me. If people want to start a discussion about something, there was one recently, a few weeks ago actually, where somebody I met on a Facebook group was absolutely adamant that the old style Avalon Hill rulebooks from 30 years ago are far better than any modern rulebook, any. And they said that they've read thousands or hundreds of modern rulebooks, and not a single rulebook is better than the old Avalon Hill rulebooks from 30 years. Now, I personally disagreed with that statement, but I was very, very keen to find their reasoning behind that and to get examples, because obviously I'm not saying they're wrong. I personally think they're wrong, but they have a reason why they're thinking that. So started a thread on BGG Guild, and various people gave their opinions, and it was an interesting read. So Guild number 2258, there's a link in the chat. Go and join and go and subscribe. Right, let's talk about the contest. So the contest today is actually, I normally get you to send me an email, and trawling through the emails and missing some of them because they go into my junk folder is a bit of a pain. So this time we're going to be using a Google form. So Vicky's going to post a link in the chat right now to a Google form. And if you are watching this live, you simply need to go to that form, fill it in, just put your name, your email address, the secret word, and then just let me know whether you're a patron supporter or not, because patron supporters will get entered twice into the contest. And if you're not a patron supporter, you'll just get entered once into the contest. What's the secret word going to be? Let's say pendulum. Let's say the word is pendulum. I've just reached onto the floor, picked up the first game that's on the floor, pendulum. Right, so yeah, fill in the Google form. If you're not watching this live, then you've got until Friday. So I'm going to close the contest at midnight on Friday, and then I'll do the draw over the weekend. And somebody is going to win £25 worth of game vouchers from Games Law. So thank you very much to Games Law for sponsoring the show by giving somebody £25 worth of game vouchers. And yeah, go and fill in the form. It's interesting because these videos normally get a few hundred views, whereas the number of people entering the contest is usually about 30, okay? Which means it's the same people winning each time. So if you want to be in with a chance, it's very simple. Click on the link, fill in the things, send it off, and you will automatically get entered into the contest. Right, how's the chat doing? Is it okay? Right, let's move on to the Facebook. So I'm a member of the Board Game Trading and Chat UK Facebook group. And on the day of the live Q&As, I always post there in advance to get some more questions. And I've had a whole bunch of questions in for that. So I'm going to go through them now. First one is from Danny. Danny says, what mechanism within a game would you like to see implemented more within a genre? And this is a really good question that I'd need to spend ages thinking about, but Danny has suggested Aeon's End non-shuffle discard pile. I'm going to steal that one because I think the way that Aeon's End handles deck building is fantastic. I like deck building games. However, I have a problem with the old school Dominion style game, which is play all, and if you don't play it, discard it, and then draw 5 cards. The reason I have a problem with, and they're very, very popular, and there's loads of them, okay? The reason why I have a problem with those games is a lot of those games are creating combos. And if you are not allowed to keep cards from one round to the next, whether you get that combo or not is luck. You draw your 5 cards, you might have the combo, you might not have the combo. And the fact that when your discard pile is empty, you shuffle it and make a new deck, again, it's random. It's random whether you get that combo or not. And, you know, whilst I appreciate Dominion and Dominion has created deck building and everything else, deck building has been done so much better in other games. And this is my same problem with Star Realms and all of these other massively popular games with the play all mechanic. I don't like the play all mechanic. And the way that Aeon's End works is just brilliant. First of all, you don't have to play all. You can keep cards from one round to the next. And when your cards go into your discard pile, you can manipulate the order and you don't shuffle it. You just turn the cards over and that is your deck. So I think that's just brilliant. You can create the combos and you can manipulate the order in which the cards go to your discard pile. I think it's fantastic. So more of that, please. and I'm surprised it hasn't been done before. And there's another game which I really like, and it just doesn't seem to be that popular, and that is Mage Wars. Now, Mage Wars, the original game, after playing it a few times, I was like, okay, this is too big, this is too unwieldy, and I understand the criticisms of the game. But Mage Wars Academy is one of those games which I'd love to play more of. It's a fantastic game. And Mage Wars Academy, for those who don't know, it is a 2-player dueling wizards type game. But instead of having a deck of cards, you have a spell book, which is thematically absolutely brilliant, right? Here is your spell book. Here are your 30 cards, and you can cast whatever spell you want, whenever you want to. Which for me, and this is the problem I have with a lot of card games, and I play a lot of card games, and I really like card games like Netrunner, Arkham Horror, and things like that, but you have a deck. And it doesn't fit with the theme of the game that you're an investigator, and all of a sudden, 2 hours later, you then draw your gun. That makes no sense whatsoever. You should have your gun with you at the start of the adventure. And it's exactly the same in all of these games where you have a deck of cards. Well, Mage Wars turns that on its head and said, there you go, you've got all your spells. You can cast whatever spell you want whenever you want to cast it. And then once you've cast it, it goes to the discard pile. So I'd like to see that more in games. Brett is asking, apart from ones you were commissioned to work on, what game have you had the most plays of this year? Right. I'm just going to pause for a minute while I look up on Board Game Geek. And now I haven't been updating my list. Do you know what it is? A guess. That's what I'm thinking. So I'm going to go to my played list. Just bear with us a minute. Now, I haven't been updating my played list for the last 6 weeks. So this isn't quite true. But if I go date range, 1st of January. Now, this is not counting games that I demoed, because I've demoed Under Falling Skies about 20 times this year, but I don't record them as games that I've played. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to say games that I've played this year and sort it by game. And the game that I've played the most of, according to this, is Tainted Grail. Yeah, Tainted Grail Fall of Avalon. It's actually tied at the moment with Expedition to Newdale. I've played both 11 times this year, but we've played Tainted Grail 2 or 3 times in the last month, and I haven't updated the list. So yeah, Tainted Grail is the game that I've played most this year. There we go. Andrew Cleverly wants to know if this is a really good question. If I was asked to make a Mount Rushmore style landmark, what would I choose as the theme? Legendary games, games designers, game mechanics, and what are the 4 names and title you've chose? It's a really good question. And I actually think this is a question which I'm going to put on the BGG Guild. So I've mentioned the BGG Guild, and I am going to put this as a question on there. So if you are a member of the BGG Guild, and if you're not, please join now. I'm going to put that question on there because I want to know what other people think. So it's if you were to make a Mount Rushmore style landmark, what type of things would you have on there? And then once you've chosen what type of things, what would the 4 things be? Now for me, I'm going to answer this question now. If it's Mount Rushmore style, for me it would have to be people. But when you were asking about the people, you see 5 years ago, I would have been able to answer this, and I would have been able to say my favourite designers are Vlaada Chvátil, Stefan Feld, Vital Lacerda, and another one, right? I would have been able to answer that. But one thing that's become apparent to me in the last few years, certainly, is that there's dozens of great designers out there. And there are some designers who I would never have said, oh yeah, they're one of my favourite designers. And then when you look at the games that they've done, they might have only done 3 games, but I've enjoyed every single one of their games that they've done. At which point, why am I not putting them up there in my top designers? And it's like my top 10 games. I probably have now many designers that I class as a top 10 designer because I've liked everything they've done, but they don't quite qualify for Mount Rushmore. So what is it that makes them qualify? Well, Vlaada, because he's designed some absolutely amazing, iconic games, 2 of my top 3 games of all time, Mage Knight and Through the Ages. And Stefan Feld, because Stefan Feld's designed 20 games now, and I love almost all of his games, so those would be definitely on there. But then how far back do we go? Should Rainer Knizia be on there? Because Rainer Knizia is amazing as a games designer, but I don't think Rainer Knizia has designed any games which I class as top 10 games, maybe not even top 20 games. but he's still a brilliant games designer and he's given a lot to the hobby. Kramer and Kiesling, they're still going now. You know, they designed games when I started getting into gaming back in the late 90s, and they're still designing games now. So should they be up there as well? Anyway, it's a great question for the guild. And yeah, let me know. As I say, go on the guild. I will ask this question on there. Paul Allwood wants to say that I did a great seminar on teaching rules at UK Games Expo. Thank you very much, Paul. And yeah, for those who don't know, at UK Games Expo last weekend, I did a seminar on teaching games. It was broadcast live on Twitch, and I will be getting a copy of that video, and I will be putting it up on my YouTube channel once I've got it, so watch this space. What subject would I like to see on a panel at a convention? And I thought, oh yeah, I'll be able to answer that. And then I thought, actually, I can't answer that. And the reason I can't answer that is for the last 4 or 5 years, my attendance at conventions has been in a professional capacity. I've not been to a convention as a punter now for so long that I'm not sure what I would want to see a seminar on, because part of me is thinking, oh, I'd like to see a seminar on maybe the design process. Well, hang on a minute, I kind of already know that because I'm involved in, or what about the development cycle of a game? No, that's stuff I already know. So part of me is thinking I'd like to go and see a seminar on it because I already know quite a lot about it and I'd like to know more. But then the other side of me is thinking maybe I should go and see a seminar on something that is something I don't have any idea about whatsoever. You know, like creating a zine for a narrative-based role-playing game, or something completely off the wall that's unusual to me. So yeah, I'm not sure about that one. Right, Michael wants to know, what exactly do I have against Arkham Horror 2nd Edition? So for those who don't know, Michael he engages with me a lot on the Board Game Trading and Chat UK Facebook group. And every time he does, he mentions Arkham Horror 2nd Edition. He keeps inviting me round to play it. And I keep basically sort of saying no politely. So what do I have against it? I don't really want to play the game, although I'm tempted to give it a go once. And the reason is, on the scale of Euro to American style gaming, Arkham Horror is right down that end. Okay, and a few years ago, even just 2 or 3 years ago, I would have had zero interest in a game like Arkham Horror because I like my Euros. I don't like the randomness. I don't like, lots of, luck-based stuff. And also, these days, I don't want games to go on for 6 to 8 hours. And I think Arkham Horror 2nd Edition, I've got friends who really love the game and play the game and they enjoy it, okay? And it is, you're involved in a story. So yeah, I said 2 or 3 years ago, I wouldn't have even touched it. Now, I am more open to ideas of luck and randomness in games as long as it tells a good story. And I'd be tempted to try something like it, but the playtime, I think, puts me off. So, and it's one of those things. There's so many great games out there. I would prefer to spend my time playing games that I think I would like rather than ones, if it took an hour and a half, I'd be definitely up for it. But at that length of time, probably not. Kevin Shaw says, I remember playtesting a game you were designing a few years ago, which ended up being called Brave New World, I think. Am I designing anything else at the moment? And the answer to that is no. And there's 2 reasons why. If you don't count the Frosthaven guest scenario that I'm designing. In terms of an actual game, there's 2 reasons why I'm not designing a game at the moment. The first one is I've kind of done it, okay? When I designed Brave New World, which used to be called Earth 2070, that used to be called Earth 2, there's been this monkey on my back for 20 years. I've been wanting to design a game for over 20 years, and I've still got so many ideas in the back of my mind for designing a game. But those ideas were sort of, as I say, it was the monkey on the shoulder. It was constantly on my mind. I was constantly writing things down, and I was getting frustrated with myself that I wasn't doing it. And eventually, and this is going back 6 or so years now, maybe even more, 7 years, 8 years, I thought, right, I'm fed up with this. I'm going to pick one of these game ideas that I've got, and I'm going to carry on working on it until it is finished and it's playable. And I did that, and the game was called Brave New World. It had a couple of re-themes along the way. and it was done and it worked. It wasn't very good, okay? It was playable and it had some cool ideas, I thought, but it needed development work and it needed a lot more effort. And this is where I came to the realization that I could carry on working on this game and putting loads and loads of time into it and tweaking it and refining it, but it's good at best. It's not very good, it's not excellent. And I realized that my skills are more about game development, game testing, and then obviously writing rulebooks, creating videos. So I'm glad that monkey is off my back. I still want to design games and I still think I've got some really good ideas, but also I don't have the time to do it and it takes a lot of time and effort. But I'm also, as I say, I've realized where my skill set is, and that is developing existing games rather than designing my own ones. And what I don't want to do is I don't want to put in all of that effort to design a game and people get it and it comes out and then 3 months later it's in the bargain bin. Or a publisher decides, oh yeah, we'll pick it up because it's Paul, it'll sell, and we'll print 2,000 copies and only 300 sell, and then they're stuck with them. It's not worth it. It just isn't worth the time and the effort in doing it. I am technically a games designer because the Mage Knight expansions have got my name on as a designer, but yeah, maybe one of these days. Right. Angela wants to know, what game do I think you should get? King of Tokyo or King of New York? So I've played King of Tokyo once and I haven't played King of New York. So Angela, this is a question I am going to put over to the chat. So this is your first question. For the chat, what game should Angela get, King of Tokyo or King of New York, and why? And if you can put in your chat, if you can put the name Angela at the start, so before typing your answer, just put Angela. Vicky, who is monitoring the chat, will get all of those messages together and we'll go back to them at the end. So this is a question for the chat. What should Angela get, King of Tokyo or King of New York, and why? Thank you very much, but I can't say because I've only played one of them. Right, Christopher wants to know, favourite common game component? Which is another really good question. It's a new question. I've not been asked this question before. So Christopher likes translucent 8mm cubes, specifically 8mm, not 9, right out. Now, we're playing Tainted Grail at the moment. That's got really nice translucent, smooth-edged cubes that are glass. Oh, it's really nice. So I do like those as well. But I would have to say, at the moment, and this is because I couldn't think of anything else, metal coins from games, as long as they are nice. Proper metal coins with the numbers on both sides, different colours for the different denominations, and different sizes for the different denominations, okay? There was a game I played a few weeks ago which had metal coins, but 2 of the coins were a similar colour and a similar size, and one was a 3 and one was a 5, and it's like, tearing my hair out. So the recent game that I did an unboxing video of was Rococo, and the metal coins in that were gorgeous. I think there were 4 different denominations, different colours, different sizes, numbers on both sides, really nice. So yeah, metal coins. I mean, you did say common component, so maybe I'm going a bit far by saying metal coins as being a common component, but to be honest, if the coins included in the game are different size, different colour and numbers on both sides, then I'm good with that as well. Kenneth Sweeney wants to know, do I think box sizes should be standardised? Not necessarily GMT size, but for example, they all tend to be the same size, varying in depth. I would like to see more standardisation than we have at the moment. At the moment, we have box sizes, I think there's too many different ones. And what I'd like to see is all of what was the old Euro style boxes, I'd like all of those to be the same size, okay? And I'd like all of the square boxes, I'd like all of those to be the same size. It really bugs me when you get, oh, it's one of those square boxes. Oh no, wait a minute, it's like half an inch bigger or half an inch smaller, because I like things to stack up nice and neat. So yeah, I would like to see more standardization on game boxes. And a few people, I get really annoyed by it and say, why don't we have standardization in game boxes? And that is because game boxes are made in different companies around the world, okay? And you cannot go to, you know, your factory in Germany or wherever that produces game boxes of this size and say, we want you to change and make the ones like they make in China or America or wherever. So yeah, I tell you what, one thing that really bugs me, and this is the original version of Kanban from Stronghold Games, is it's a square box, except it's not square. It looks square, but it's slightly different. And I'm putting the box lid on and it's like, oh, it's really annoying. So yeah, if you're going to make a box that looks square, make it square. Robert Elliott, what's the best rulebook that you have read that you haven't worked on, and what makes it the best in your opinion? I think I've answered this question before. And I think I've said Great Western Trail. Great Western Trail, for me, the rulebook was fantastic. What made it the best, in my opinion, is I was able to read that rulebook and I knew how to play the game, okay? Everything in the rulebook flowed. Everything was there at the time I needed it. The important things were highlighted. And Great Western Trail is a complex game. And it's a lot harder to do a rulebook for a complex game than it is for a simpler one. And yeah, I mean, I'd need to go back to it now, but William Niebling, brilliant rulebook editor. He did Mombasa, he did Great Western Trail. Those rulebooks are really good. And yeah, I didn't have anything to do with those. Right, Carl is saying, do I think it would be a good idea if rulebooks for expansions replaced the original rulebooks? So instead of getting the original rulebook alongside the expansion rulebook, Carl is suggesting that you actually do a new rulebook. So there's one rulebook for here's how you play the base game, and then there's another rulebook for here's how you play the game with the expansion, so it's all in one. And I can see the advantages of that. And actually, I've just finished work on the new Clash of Cultures rulebook. Okay, so Clash of Cultures, he's getting a new version, the Monumental Edition. It's coming out, I don't know when. I think I do know, but I think I'm not allowed to say. So anyway, it's coming out soon from WizKids. I say just finished. I got the PDF this morning. Okay, so I've been working on the Google Doc for that rulebook for months. The graphic designer has now done the layout, and I got sent the first PDF of the rulebook this morning, which we're now going to start final editing and final proofing. And WizKids asked me the question. They said to me, Paul, we are publishing a new version of Clash of Cultures. We want you to do the rulebook. It's going to have the expansion merged in, so it's all in one. What do you want to do with the rulebook? Do you want to have a separate rulebook for the expansion, or do you want to merge it in, or what do you want to do? And what I've done is I've merged it in together, but everywhere that there's an expansion, it's got a coloured box around it. So, for example, there are different types of units in the game. Rather than just describing the base game units, the infantry and the ships, and then 20 pages later, here's how the elephants work. What I've done is I've got all the units on one page, but the ones that came in the expansion have got a box around them. So you can clearly see, here's the things for the expansion. That allows you as a player to read through the rules. And if you're playing it for the first time, you can go, oh, big red box. I'll ignore that for my first game because that's the expansion stuff. But if you want to include it, it's all there. Now, I did that because I was given that choice at the start of working on the rulebook, and I believed that was the best way of doing it. However, if I was given another project and said, Paul, the rulebook for this game has already been done, it's there, it's done, it's finished, we now want you to do the rulebook for the expansion, I probably wouldn't suggest the same thing again. And that is, it's not something I've ever thought of. So thank you very much for this question, because I'm actually going to keep this question in the back of my mind. And the next time somebody comes to me and says, Paul, we've got an expansion for an existing game and we want to do a rulebook for it, I'm going to consider this. I'm going to say, rather than just doing a rulebook for the expansion, how about we actually redo the whole rulebook and put the expansion stuff in? Because then, as Carl says, you don't have to then keep referring to two rulebooks. So yeah, really good suggestion, and I need to think more about it. Chubi has asked me, what impact do I think the lack of a physical Essen is going to have on this year's October releases? So I've done two things on this. First of all, I can speak for the publishers that I work with. CGE, it is not affecting their schedule whatsoever. They are still going to produce the games at the same time as they would produce them, but their games are going to go to retail. So they're not going to have a physical booth at Physical Essen, because Essen is not happening. It's happening virtually, and I'll be doing demos of the new games there, but their games will go straight to retail. Hall Games that are producing Bonfire, the new Stefan Feld game for this year, they talked about it. I spoke to Ralph, and Ralph was like, oh, we've got the game. It was going to be released at Essen this year. We're not sure what we're going to do. And then a few weeks later, he contacted me and he said, Paul, we're going to go ahead. We're just going to go ahead. Now, the disadvantage for a small publisher is that you're not going to get the sales director Essen. And, you know, let's talk numbers here. If you're a publisher and you're selling your game for 50 euros at Essen, you're going to get given 50 euros, okay? If you put that game into retail, you're probably going to get 20 euros. So for every game you sell at Essen, you are getting the RRP of the game. You're getting 50 euros. Whereas every game you don't sell at Essen, you've got to sell to a distributor that then has to sell it to a shop and everything else. And you get about 40%. So a lot of smaller publishers rely on those sales at Essen in order to stay afloat. I mean, CGE, when they started, they were only able to survive as a company due to the sales at Essen. That gave them the money to keep them going for the year. Now CGE are a big company, they can produce a game, it'll go straight to retail, and that's fine. But smaller publishers, smaller publishers might struggle. However, all of the ones that I've spoken to are still releasing their games as normal. Now, I did post on Twitter earlier on, and I've had a reply from 3 publishers. So Michael Fox from Hub Games, he said that a lack of accidental ability to discover something new will definitely have an impact, and that's absolutely right. People who go to these conventions, first of all, oh, there's a new Stefan Feld game coming out, I'm going to go and buy it. And a lot of people know, before they've even gone to the convention, that they're going to go and buy it. But you can't underestimate the amount of people that walk past and go, oh, that looks pretty, I will have a look at it and then buy it. And that's what Michael's saying. The accidental ability to discover something new is going to have an impact. Okay. And again, if you're a small publisher and you don't have great marketing, how are people going to find out about your game? Michael says, as we've seen with Gen Con and UK Games Expo, there's no replacement for walking the hall. I don't know how that's going to impact their schedule, but it is a good comment. Shannon from Chip Theory Games says that I think some publishers would have pushed the release at Essen to a later date this year. The lack of a physical con creates less pressure on timing, and COVID has caused unavoidable delays. But again, Shannon's for Chip Theory Games, I don't think has affected what Chip Theory Games have planned to do. Okay. And Matthias from Frosted Games, for him, no impact whatsoever. He said he's already planned to have less releases this year in October and more during the year. So yeah, the general consensus I'm getting from publishers who I've spoken to is that it hasn't actually affected them that much. If you are watching this and you are a publisher and it has affected your release schedule, I am curious to know. I assume you've just delayed it. Right, quick mention about the contest again. If you are watching this live or you are not watching this live and you're watching this, as long as it's before Friday, the 28th of August, midnight UK time, you can enter the contest. Vicky's going to post a link in the chat now. And yeah, just fill in the form. The secret word is pendulum, because that's the game I've got here right now, which I did an unboxing of at the weekend. And if you are a Patreon supporter, please make sure you mention that, because this video and a lot of the other content that I'm making at the moment is only made possible through the support of the Patreon campaign. So a lot of you who are watching are Patreon supporters. Thank you very much for that. Ian Turner, a couple of other questions and then we go to the live questions. Ian Turner, if Jaffa Cakes had never been created, what would your go-to biscuit stroke mini cake be? No question, the chocolate hobnob. Milk chocolate hobnob. Oh, absolutely love them. Vicky's shaking her head. Milk chocolate, plain chocolate? Yeah, okay, so Vicky wants plain chocolate hobnobs. For me, milk chocolate hobnobs, definitely. And Nick wants to know, have I played Pax Pamir and what are my thoughts on it? Now, he says it's $85 on Kickstarter, which feels expensive for what it is. Now, I'm going to answer that question with a question, because I'm aware that there is Pax Pamir and Pax Pamir 2nd Edition. I have not played either of them. I have heard that there are a number of issues with the first one, but I've heard that Pax Pamir 2nd Edition is fantastic, and it is very high on my list of games that I want to play, because I've heard nothing bad about it. Everybody I know who has played Pax Pamir 2nd Edition has said it's absolutely fantastic, so I'm very keen to try it. And people whose opinion I respect and people who have a similar taste in games to me have also said it's extremely good. Whether it's worth $85, that's a personal choice. Obviously, games seem to be quite expensive these days. But yeah, I haven't played it. My thoughts on it are, I definitely want to play the 2nd edition. I have no interest in the 1st edition. I think I've heard that the 2nd edition is actually a very different game. It's not just like a reprint with a few tweaks. I might be wrong on that, but yeah, I don't have much interest in the 1st edition. Right, so that is it from all of the questions for from the Board Game Trading and Chat UK Facebook group. As I say, pop onto the BGG Guild. There's going to be a question on there about the Mount Rushmore question. And we're now at 10 to 6. We've got 40 minutes left, and I'm now going to go to the live questions. So, live questions. I say live questions. I'm going to go through the questions that you've been asking in the chat while I've been wittering away for the last 50 minutes. So the first question is, from mobile uploads, where do you most want to travel to? Do you know? Because I have an idea of where I most want to travel to right now. Because years ago it was Egypt, right? And then we went to Egypt on holiday. Tick, Egypt is now off my list. But write it down. Write it down, because I can't. Vicky's going to write down. This is like Mr. and Mrs. Vicky's going to write down put down a couple of places where you think I would most like to travel to. And then I'll let you know. And put your answers in the chat as well. Where do you think I would most like to travel to? And I'll keep an eye on the chat. Okay, so Vicky's written down a couple of things. What do you think in the chat? Joe says Lisboa. We've been there. We went to Portugal a couple of years ago, and we went to Lisboa, and it was really nice. Blackpool. Yes, definitely want to go Blackpool. To see a live panda in China. The bottom of your step. Greece. It's a good one. Rio, says Tony. Somewhere up north, says Toby. Spa for the Grand Prix, which is this weekend. Dublin. Been to Dublin. Nomi's not watching live and is answering questions from 20 minutes ago. Yes. Kabuki Kid says Japan. Okay, so Vicky has written down New Zealand. Well, no, you've written down New Zealand. Okay, so when the Lord of the Rings films came out, I was definitely wanting to go to New Zealand because it looks amazing. And I do still want to go to New Zealand because of the scenery. Although, to be fair, a lot of the English countryside is very similar. But yeah, I definitely would like to go to New Zealand at one point. But there is one place which I'm fascinated by. And I want to go there because it's scary, because it's so different. And that is Tokyo. And what's interesting is I looked at the chart of where I should go, and all the messages were Tokyo because people were answering the question from earlier on. Definitely want to go to Japan. Definitely want to go to Tokyo. The culture is just so different. It would be just, yeah. And I kind of want to do that. As I say, I'm scared by it just because it is so different. But I just find it fascinating. And obviously, I've been doing a lot of board games related to Japan and the history and everything else. And right now I'm working on various rule books for Jordan Draper. And a lot of his games are set in Japan. So it's just because it's so different. And part of me wants to step outside of my comfort zone, but in a way different from Egypt. Egypt was outside my comfort zone because I knew we were going to go there and we were going to get absolutely hassled because we were tourists. And that made me uncomfortable. You okay? Okay. Going to Japan or Tokyo or something like that makes me feel uncomfortable in a different way. I don't think I'm going to get harassed or, pickpocketed or anything like that. It's just in Egypt, a lot of people spoke English. I mean, maybe they do in Japan. I'm not sure, but it's just, yeah, I kind of want to go. So at some point, I will. I think Vicky's just taken a phone call. Oh, the doorbell. I didn't even hear the doorbell. Right, okay, so Scott Smith, question. As a content creator, removing compensation from the equation, what is your favourite publisher to work with and why? That's a difficult question for me to answer about my favourite publisher to work with, because I don't really want to be showing much favouritism. And some of those publishers that I work with might be watching right now. And if I don't list them, yeah, and it's tricky as a content creator. Right, okay, so forget my paid work. We're talking as a content creator, removing compensation from the equation. Who is your favourite publisher to work with? Oh, I don't know. removing compensation from the equation. So Vicky just whispered to me the name of a publisher that I think are brilliant. I think the publisher is brilliant. I think they're doing really good work. They produce really high quality games. And they are just about to send me a whole boatload of games for free. That's not why I like them. I said, look, you don't really, no, we want to support you, Paul. And I'm like, okay, well, that's great. This is a really tricky question. I'm not going to answer it, I'm afraid, Scott, because yeah, I feel a little uncomfortable. Yeah, no, I'm not going to answer it. When we're allowed out again, come and find me at a convention. We'll have a drink and then I'll tell you, as long as you don't record it. But I don't want to say it here. Right, Tom says, thoughts on Bonfire? How do you see it being regarded compared to other Feld games? So I am doing a how to play video for Bonfire, and I did a tutorial and playthrough a couple of weeks ago. Stefan Feld is one of my favourite designers. So what are my thoughts on it? I can't really give you a personal opinion on the game because it's the first Feld game that I'm actually being commissioned to create a video for. So therefore, you know, I don't want to say, oh, it's rubbish. It's my least favourite Feld game, because the publisher who might be watching this video is going to say, well, in that case, Paul, we don't want you to do a video for it. I will try and give you information rather than opinion. Okay, so if I was to rate my Stefan Feld games on a scale, Bonfire at the moment is in the top half of that scale, but I need to play it more. How do I see it being regarded in compared to other ones? It is very much a point salad, but the points are scored at the end. So it's not like Trajan where you're doing lots of little different actions that are going to get you, oh, and that's worth 2 points, and that's worth 3 points, and and it all adds up. You're going to get points at the end of the game, but it is very much a point salad because you're going to get points from multiple different sources. I can tell you the opinion of people who I've played it with, who are mostly Feld fans, is that they've really liked it. So I think compared to other Feld titles, I think it is going to be highly regarded. I think if you like Feld games, it's a no-brainer. It's an absolute no-brainer. If you like games from Stefan Feld, you're going to like Bonfire. Is that the new Hobbit shirt? Yeah. So Vicky noticed that Mountain Warehouse were having a sale a week ago. And she said, look, they've got some shirts on, which, you know, might look good on you. So we had a look through, and yes, they had a sale on, but that's because a lot of the shirts they had, there was only one size left. So there was lots of shirts there that I liked, except they were only available in like extra large or small or whatever. We found 2 shirts that I liked that were available in medium. Okay? So we bought them both. One of them is the one I'm wearing right now, which fits and is a medium-sized shirt. So this is a fairly new shirt that I got last week. The other one was also medium. I'm going to find the picture of it. Just bear with us a minute. I'm going to put this on screen because this is hilarious. I'm going to find this. Where did you post it? You posted it on Slack, didn't you? Have you got it handy? Can you send it to me on Messenger? Right, Vicky's going to send me a photo now on Messenger, which I'm going to save. Because, yeah, she took a photo of me wearing it. And if you want to have a laugh, make sure you're not drinking anything right now. Because... This is quite funny. Right, I'm going to save that to my desktop, and I'm going to put it on screen now. Add source, media file, image. There you go. Right, so this is this is the other medium-sized shirt that arrived. It's not medium-sized whatsoever. It absolutely buried me. It's not even large. It's either extra large or extra, extra large. Anyway, so that one is going back to Mountain Warehouse. We thought about sending it back and saying, this is the wrong size. Please, could you send us one that's medium? But it was labelled as medium. So my worry is that we send it back to them and they just send us another one that's also been mislabeled. So we're just going to get a refund on that one. It's also got quite a lot of green in it, which means I can't actually wear it for the green screen background because it won't work. Anyway, yeah, medium-sized tent. Right, Andy Grant says, what's my thoughts on miniature, tabletop, wargaming and similar? So I mentioned earlier on, right at the start when we were talking about Magic the Gathering, that I dabbled with tabletop miniature wargaming. And I've been dabbling with tabletop miniature wargaming ever since I started gaming in the 80s. Okay, now over the years, I have tried so many different systems, World War II, fantasy, historic, lots of miniatures, sometimes not with miniatures, sometimes just with counters. I have spent hundreds of pounds and months of my life over the years on scenery, making big tabletop terrains and everything else. Yeah. And I've now stopped. And I've stopped for a couple of reasons. The first reason is I could never find a system that I was completely happy with. I mean, I invested so much time and effort into buying, wargaming systems, learning them, trying to play them, and it just didn't work for me. I just couldn't find a system that I was comfortable with. The other reason is, and I realized this thanks to effectively trial and error, but one of the reasons why I don't like wargaming is actually was something that in my voyage of discovery about my personality traits is I have to have everything right. I'm the kind of person that will walk into your house, and if there's a painting on the wall that isn't quite straight, I will straighten it, okay? I mentioned earlier on, I want my box sizes to line up, okay? There's various names for that, and I have all of those things, but wargaming for me was too imprecise, and this is what really bothered me. Every time I was playing any kind of wargame, and it would require measuring, it's like, okay, range 12 inches. Is that 12 inches? Oh, well, it's kind of 12 inches, it's on 12 inches. And there are other ones where you had to say, in order to have line of sight, you actually have to, crouch down, look through the eyes of the soldier, and if you can see your target, can I see them? Well, I can see their head. And it was just ambiguous. And this is the personality trait that I have. I don't like ambiguity at all. I want things clear cut. I want things absolutely exact. So any game that involves measuring distances for me is right out. Hex-based war games, yes. I'm all over those because they're precise. Move 2 hexes, 1, 2. Dead easy, right? Range, 3 hexes. Got it. Okay, so I can play hex-based war games and possibly hex-based tabletop wargaming I can do, but I can't do ones with distances. I'd like to do more of it. Okay, it's the genre that I would like to do more of, but other than light games like Battle Lore 2nd Edition, which I really want to play more of because I've painted all of the miniatures, which is a tabletop war game, I kind of want to do some of the hex and counter based war games, but I know a lot of them, the barrier to entry with regards to the rules, the overhead and everything else. But if I had infinite time, then this is what I'd do. I would play some World War II based hex and counter war games because I find the World War II period fascinating. And I don't just want to move tanks around and shoot. I want rules that have supply lines. I want rules that have supply so you can blow up the German fuel depot, which means their units can't move. And you know, things like that. I want that kind of depth and realism in a game. Yeah, anyway, I want to do more tabletop wargaming. Heath wants to know what game that has yet to be released, what game that has yet to be released sticks in your mind the most after playtesting it. Oh. And this is the thing, 90% of what I do is on games that haven't been released yet. What have I been working on recently? Okay, Bonfire isn't out yet. Lost Ruins of Arnak isn't out yet. Under Falling Skies isn't out yet. Euthea isn't out yet. Agamonia is not out yet. What games am I working on at the moment that aren't out yet? Most of them. That's the thing. Which ones of those would stick in my mind? Again, this is me not trying to show favoritism for one publisher rather than another, but there's a lot of games that I'm working on right now. And I'm in the lucky situation right now because over the years I've worked on games that I don't like, okay? That is just how it is. Sometimes I work on games and I'm a developer and I don't actually like the game, but I still have to do my job. I still have to develop it, still have to help with the rulebook. But right now, there's a lot of games that I'm working on that I think are great games. Under Falling Skies, yeah. So which one of those has stuck in my mind the most after playtesting it? Right. I might have to say Agamonia. I might. And I am biased. And the reason I am slightly biased is Agamonia should be big, it should be fantastic, and it should be huge, and it should be amazing. And I'm concerned that it might end up going under the radar. And I hope I know the people they've got doing the marketing for it, and I hope that come whenever it's going to go on Kickstarter, which I think is later this year, maybe even January, I hope when it goes live on Kickstarter, everybody knows about it, and it's big and it's massive. Because right now, the work that I'm involved in and doing on this game, this could be, it looks amazing, and it's absolutely fascinating. For those people who don't know, it is a cooperative, fantasy-based narrative story game. And we've had loads of them, okay? We've had Gloomhaven, and we've had various other games in that genre. So you might be thinking, well, there's already loads of those. What's different about this? It's different, okay? It's very different in the way that the story evolves as you're playing it. As you move around the board, you reveal new parts of the story, and every scenario is extremely interactive. So yeah, I think probably that one has stuck in my mind for a couple of reasons. One, it feels more like a role-playing game than any other game that I've ever played because of the way the story evolves as you're going. It feels like you've got a GM that's basically saying, oh, you've now met the innkeeper. The innkeeper sold you this. And also because I think the game needs a lot more attention. As I say, not out yet. There is a Facebook page if you're interested. There's very little details about there, but my Patreon supporters are involved in playtesting of this game. And if you are a Patreon supporter of mine and you have been playtesting this game and you are in the chat, feel free to tell people what you think about Agamonia, because all I've been hearing from you has been extremely positive so far. Tony says, you may have noticed that I'm vicariously hoovering up vintage games. Yes, the rulebooks are appalling. You're absolutely right. How about redoing a rulebook each month as an ongoing project? Yeah, I'll do that in my spare time. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, if I was in retirement and if I wasn't working the hours that I do work, which I'm not going to complain about, that would actually be quite fun. You know, get one of these old games. Because yeah, Tony has a blog on BGG. Subscribe to it. It's called Every Man and His Shed. Every Man Has a Shed. I can't remember what it's called. I subscribe to it and I read it every single day. Tony, put in the chat what it's called. Anyway, Tony has a blog on BGG. And a number of times a week, he finds one of these old vintage games from like the 60s or 70s and posts pictures about it and everything else. And you're absolutely right. The rule books, you can't even work out how to play the game from these rule books. And yeah, part of me is saying, yeah, it would be a fun project to take that rule book and turn it into a modern rule book. It's just time. Don't have the time. Have I been through this next question enough to talk about this? Right, there's a message here in red, which I'm not supposed to read out. Okay, I'll read it again. So this is a question from Keith. Keith is newish to the hobby, but loves heavy games. What are some of the best practices for teaching them? Your group likes to jump in and start playing. How do you determine what rules are best to wait to explain? Right, so Keith, I am not going to talk about this right now, but the reason for that is in the next couple of weeks, there's going to be a video appearing on my YouTube channel with my tips on teaching people how to play games, okay? And I spent an hour. I ran a seminar on it, so that's where you can best find the information on there. Also, and I haven't announced this to anybody yet, but yesterday morning, I recorded with Stella from Meeple University. We went through top tips for teaching heavy games, okay? It was a pre-recorded, it didn't go out live, but it's going out live for PAX. And I will tell you now when it's going out live, because I've got the link, and I'll be posting this on my social media, but Stella sent me the link this morning, and I've forgotten when it is. Is this it? 25th? No, that was yesterday. Here we go. Right, it's going out Sunday, 13th of September at 10:45 in the morning UK time is when it's going out. So there is going to be a show as part of PAX, which was it was a pre-recorded show, me and Stella from Meeple University, and we talk about top tips for teaching games. So that's why I'm not going to answer it here, because that information will be with you in a couple of weeks' time. Now, as far as I will just touch on one thing you've mentioned, which is your group likes to jump in and start playing. Yes, thank you, because I love doing that as well. And the number of people that say, Oh no, we want to learn every single rule about the game before we move a piece. It's like, okay, well, we can sit here for an hour and a half and read through every single rule, or we just jump in, write the first game off as a learning game, jump in, start playing, make a whole load of mistakes. If you want to, restart the game halfway through. For me, that's the best way of learning how to play. Allow undos, let people make mistakes, and just jump in and start playing. So I'm glad your group like doing that. I would love to join your group, at some point, because that's the way I like learning. Tony says, I missed seeing you in person at the cons this year, but you was able to participate. Thank you very much. Tony joined in a game of Under Falling Skies with me at Gen Con Online. Do you think online cons are here to stay, even when things go back to normal? Now, yes and no. Okay, online cons are all that we've got at the moment. And I know some people don't like online cons. If you don't like them, you don't have to attend them. But I think online cons are great. They will never be a replacement for a physical con. They are not as good as a physical con. Absolutely. But it's all we've got. And without online cons, we wouldn't have anything right now. And online conventions are giving some people, the people who enjoy going to them, the ability to go to them. And in some respects, they're better because that seminar that I did at UK Games Expo on teaching people how to play games, you would have had to have physically gone to UK Games Expo in order to see that seminar. Now, anybody around the world can watch that seminar, and they could have watched it. And it's the same with the seminars at Gen Con Online. People from the UK can't go to Gen Con, a lot of people, because it's thousands of pounds. But there were seminars happening at Gen Con Online which you could have watched remotely. You weren't able to do that before. So I think online cons has opened up conventions to a wider audience, which is great. Will they continue afterwards? I don't think they will, which I think is sad. Because I think once real conventions start up again, I think the people's interest in online conventions is going to diminish. And therefore, if you were to run an online convention, a lot of people just wouldn't turn up because they say, well, why would we go to a virtual convention when we can now go to real ones instead? And it's a shame, because virtual conventions are a way people from around the world can meet up, play games together from the comfort of their own home, attend seminars with people who are half a world away, and there are advantages to them. So it'll be a shame to lose that, but yeah, I don't think they're going to continue. Albert says, I know you may be bound by professional obligation. Can you give us any teasers about Cloud Age? All I can tell you about Cloud Age is as soon as I knew about it, I have reached out to Clay from Capstone Games and said, I am 100% interested in doing any kind of coverage for this game. Alexander Pfister is one of my favourite designers. If we go back to Mount Rushmore, sorry, Alex, your name should have been on that list, okay? One of my favourite designers, designed some of my favourite games. I think he's a genius and I love his games. I haven't heard back yet from Clay. So any teasers about Cloud Age? You know more than I do. I've seen the front cover. I know the name of the game. That's all I know. I am not currently involved in that game at all, and I would love to be. Maybe I'll reach out to Clay again just in case he missed my message. But yes, if you know Clay, feel free to just drop him a message and say, is Paul Grogan going to be covering this game? Because I think he would like to do some coverage. Yes, I would. Gedson wants to know, what would be a long game that you would still like to play? And now you've said over 3 hours, which is actually a good, because for me, 3 hours is about my limit now for most games. 2.5 to 3 hours is about my limit, because I believe now that there are so many great games that can be played in 2.5 to 3 hours, that why would I want to spend longer playing a game? There are a couple. I mean, 10, 15 years ago, I would be like, right, we're going to play Advanced Civ. It's going to take 12 hours, but it's going to be great. Now, although I hold a place in my heart for Advanced Civilization, why would I want to spend 12 hours playing that game when I can play ones that scratch the same itch and are playable in about 3 or 4 hours? But there are some games now that I would still play that are over 3 hours. Mage Knight is one of them. 2 to 3 player Mage Knight, full conquest, would be more than 3 hours. Cloudspire, I could probably just get about a game in 3 hours, maybe. But Cloudspire can sometimes run on the longer side of things. Yeah, I mean, 4-player Cloudspire, 2 versus 2, you're looking at 5 hours. Okay, fantastic. Only done it once, loved it. Didn't even finish the game, still loved it. So there are a few games that I would still, that are longer games that I would still like to play. But generally, the medium to heavy Euro games, it needs to be under 3 hours for me. Another question from Tony. We talk a lot about games designers, but do you have any games developers or publishers that you think make improvements to great games? Yeah, and developers, sometimes they are the unsung heroes, and I'm saying that as a game developer myself. If you are interested in game development, I actually did an interview about a month ago. It was an interview podcast. It was part of the Dice Tower. I will try and dig it out. Bear with us a minute. Talk amongst yourselves. I'm going to dig it out now. So this was podcast, game development, Paul Grogan, Dice Tower. There you go. Let's see if I can find it. Dice Tower Network Podcast Ludology. Longview. Oh, where is it? Oh, I can't remember. Apologies if the person who I did the podcast with is in here, but it was only about a month ago. Maybe I'll get rid of Dice Tower, but I'm sure it was part of the Dice Tower network. That one, theme versus settings. It turns out I've been on a lot of podcasts. It's in there. I tell you what, does some people want to Google it and find it? It was a podcast I was on, and it was talking about game development and the importance of the game developer. If I wasn't a game developer, I would have found that really fascinating. There are a number of good game developers out there, and also there are some designers who are also employed as game developers. Okay, so one of the games that I'm working on at the moment, I'm doing the rulebook for it, and I'm going to be doing a video for it, is Endless Winter, and Johnny Pat-Canton is a game developer on that game. Now, Johnny is a game designer in his own right, but he's been brought in to do game development on the game as well. Also, Paul Incow did a lot of game development for Vital Lacerda's games over the years, and you know, Paul's a great guy, and I'm friends with Paul, and I got to know Paul through his development work that he did on Vital's games. So he's a really good game developer. Vital needs somebody who is a strong game developer to basically say no. No, that's too complicated. It's too fiddly. It only makes sense to you. Stop, rein it back a bit. And I think the development work that Paul's done on Vital's games has been really good. So, yeah, let's see if we can find that link. It was only about a month ago, and it was mentioned on Twitter, and I just, yeah, it's gone from my head. Sebastian says, not sure if it's been asked before, but after watching 2 of my Frostpunk playthroughs, how much will the board game differ from the video game? I can tell you that. I am actually working this week and last week on the rulebook for the Frostpunk board game, which is one of the most enjoyable things that I'm working on at the moment, because I absolutely love the Frostpunk setting, and the computer game is fantastic. And the board game is managing to mirror it. It's so interesting playing the computer game, and I am doing regular streams on the Frostpunk computer game. I'll be doing another one at 4 o'clock tomorrow, and another one at 4 o'clock on Friday, and I've done 3 already. It's really interesting working on the rulebook for the game and playing the computer game pretty much at the same time, because I'm like, oh yeah, that's how that works, yeah, and I can see how that works, and this is because of that. So yeah, the designers of the board game have managed to capture the feel of the board game, the feel of the computer game really well, and a lot of it is extremely similar, and there are so many things that I'm working on the rulebook, and I am taking their rough notes and turning it into a proper rulebook, and I'm reading the bit about the exploration cards, and I'm like, okay, so whenever the scouts reach their destination, you can choose to either turn back or carry on. If you choose to carry on, flip the card face down and then take the next card and put it on the top, but keep revealed the bit of the stuff, oh yeah, right, but if you come back, then what you do is you flip the card over, get the resources, and then the next one goes on top, which means the next one is further away. Oh yeah, that absolutely makes sense. And this is one thing that I love about board games that have thematic rules, is that you're reading the rules, or in my case, writing the rules, and you're like, oh, I can picture this. This makes absolute thematic sense, and this is going to be great, because when you start teaching this game to other people, they're going to be like, wait a minute, that rule sounds really complicated. Oh, I see. It's because you've reached that. The next one is further. Yeah, okay. So yeah, they are managing to capture that. So the board game will differ from the video game quite a bit, and that they can't capture everything. But yeah, there's a tech tree, there's buildings, the buildings work in the same way, there's exploration. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that's there. The way that they've done the heating thing, where you put coal in and it heats it up, that's really clever, the way that they've done that. Jonathan is saying, is Journeys in Middle-earth any good? I think I've done a review of it. Have I done a review of it? I've certainly done videos on it. So Paul Grogan, review Journeys in Middle-earth. Journeys in Middle-earth. Review Lord of the Rings, Journeys in Middle-earth. Paul Grogan tells you what he thinks about it. Yes, there you go. Go and watch the video. Just do a Google search for my name. There you go. There's me. Lord of the Rings, Journeys in Middle-earth. I did a review. So yes, is it any good? You can only play solo if that changes your opinion. Yeah, it's really good. Check out my review. You can only play solo 1 to 3 heroes. That's fine. I would play 2 to 3 heroes. Yeah, I mean, it plays 1 to 5, but I think playing 2 heroes yourself would be fine. Be Creative says, what's the hardest escape room board game? Vicky shrugged, says you don't know. Question for the chat. That's what I'm going to do. Question for the chat. What is the hardest escape room board game that you've ever played? Some of the exit ones have been really hard, and some of the unlock ones have been really hard. We've mainly played the exit series and the unlock series. We've done a couple of other ones. As for which one is the hardest, which was that unlock that we really struggled with? Alice in Wonderland? Yeah, okay. The Alice in Wonderland scenario for unlock, we found particularly hard, but we tested it. Okay? You fell asleep. We were tired, yeah. But we tested it, okay? So for the last 3 or 4 boxes of Unlock, we've been part of the testing team. And yeah, the version of the Alice in Wonderland Unlock scenario that we got was just mind-bogglingly difficult. It was just crazy hard. And we basically, obviously, we fixed a lot of the text and things like that, but we also worked with them on making it easier because it was so hard. So yeah, the hardest one I think is probably that scenario, but we played the testing version of it, and the final version was easier. Andrew says, do you prefer doing seminars at online cons or in-person cons? You asked me this, didn't you? Afterwards. I think I prefer in-person. If given the choice, I would always do an in-person one. And I think Vicky asked me afterwards, was it more nerve-wracking sitting here in front of a camera and talking than it would have been stood on a stage with a room full of 200 people? I've done seminars to rooms of 200 people, 250 people. It's nerve-wracking, okay? It does make me nervous, and I cover that and I hide that well, and I take a deep breath and I just talk like a train in order to, get over the nervousness, which is what I'm doing now. So I'm as uncomfortable with both of them. I think I'm more uncomfortable with these because I'm running the stream. Okay, so it's my computer, I'm running this, I've got to check the volumes, is the microphone working, everything else. When I'm on a stage and I'm doing a seminar, somebody else is in charge of it, somebody else is filming it, somebody else is doing the audio. I'm just there to talk to people. Yeah, so I think I prefer the in-person ones. Which game box have I hidden my copy of Pax Pamir in? Says Paul. I don't know. And do you mean first edition or second edition? But Paul Bryant from Games Law has hidden his copy of Pax Pamir and has lost it. Okay. Speaking of Games Law, quick mention about the contest. Vicky's going to put the link in the show notes now. In the chat. I'm running a contest. Games Law have given me £25 worth of game vouchers. Well, they've not given them to me. They're going to give them to you. One lucky viewer can enter the contest, and all you need to do is fill in that form. It asks you for your name, your email address, your inside leg measurement, secret word, which is pendulum, and whether you are a patron supporter or not. If you are a patron supporter, you will get an extra entry into the contest. because I've got to say thank you to my Patreon supporters who basically fund the channel and a lot of the stuff that's happening. So yeah, thank you very much for your support. Let me just check how many entries we've had to that contest right now. We can give you this live, coming live and direct from Network 23. 48 responses. Okay, so 48 people have currently entered the contest right now, which is great. There's still time. You've got until Friday midnight to enter the contest. Let's see how many of them have put the right word. Because some people just randomly enter the contest and put random things down. Summary. How do I get a pie chart? There you go. Right. Okay. So it's interesting. Okay. Yeah. So everybody's got the right answer, but it's come as 4 different things. It's like there's 4 different spellings. So everybody currently has the correct answer. Yeah. Right. Do I bling out my games? Generally speaking, no. Apart from painting the miniatures, and I am painting miniatures. It's really weird because I paint miniatures. I spend dozens and dozens of hours painting miniatures for games that I might never play. I paint miniatures as a way, as part of, it's therapeutic because it forces me to take time off work. It forces me to concentrate on something else. And it means I can sit and watch TV because I can't just sit and watch TV because I'd fall asleep. And I can't just sit and paint miniatures because I don't have the time. So tonight we're going to be watching some episodes of Super Flaro, which is the word that we call, we're basically watching Arrow, Flash and Supergirl. And we're watching all 3 series at the same time because we're watching them in the order that you're supposed to, the chronological order. So we call it Super Flaro. So we'll be watching some Super Flaro tonight whilst I'm painting. That is a way of blinging out my games. Do I bling out my games with any other fancy components? No. And the reason for that is that I don't tend to play a game repeatedly and then keep replaying it, you know, over and over again. So for example, Anachrony. I like the game, really good game. I've played it about 6 or 7 times. I could bling out Anachrony. You know, I could. But then I spend lots of money on some extra fancy components for it, and then it gets played once every couple of years. It's like, if you've got a game you really like and you're playing it regularly and you're going to carry on playing it regularly, like the people I know who've played Terraforming Mars 100 times, sure, bling it out, that's great. For me, I don't get to play those games that many times, really. We've blinged out Tainted Grail in that we've painted the miniatures and we've got an insert for it. But other than that, we've painted the Gloomhaven miniatures. A friend of mine in America, friend and Patreon supporter, Patrick, has used his 3D printer to print loads of 3D scenery for me from Gloomhaven. Would I have printed that scenery myself if I had a 3D printer? I probably would, because we've played Gloomhaven 40 times. So yeah. Okay, Gloomhaven is the exception. I have blinged out my copy of Gloomhaven because we play it a lot. Kabuki Kid wants to know, what is the last thing you read for pleasure? Now, if we're talking physical book, it's a bit of a sore subject because it was 5 years ago, plus, maybe more. I was reading the Robin Hood Assassin books. And I was on book 3, which is the last one in the trilogy. And I was halfway through. And that's the last time I've read a physical book. And it was about 6 years ago. So it's a sore subject because I want to get back to it, but it's been 6 years. And it's like, what am I doing with my life? So I try not to think about it. In terms of what I'm reading on the iPad in bed at night for pleasure, I'm currently going through the Marvel Ultimate series of comics. So that's the last thing that I'm reading. I'm on like issue 20 of X-Men Ultimates or something like that. So anyway, I've got the whole Ultimates collection for the Marvel comics and I'm reading through them. And that is something that I'm reading for pleasure. So it's graphic novels. I've also read, so graphic novels are what I read on the iPad when I'm in bed. Lock and Key, fantastic. Possibly the best graphic novels that I've ever read. They're just really, really good. But yeah, I'm reading a lot of graphic novels. Oh, audiobooks, yeah. So yeah, whilst I don't read, I used to listen to a lot of audiobooks, and again, that's another thing that's stopped in the last year. But the Dresden Files audiobooks, if I didn't have a problem reading physical books, the Dresden File books are fantastic. So I'm listening to those on audiobook, and they're brilliant. Do I prefer rounded or sharp-edged dice? Definitely rounded. Mainly because Otherwise, if I leave one on the floor and stand on it, it's very painful. Adil wants to know what are my top 3 Feld games. Oh, well, Trajan is my number 1. Castles of Burgundy used to be very high up the list, but I don't think Castles of Burgundy scales well. I think it's great at 4, but not so good at other player counts. Top 3 Feld games. I'm just going to go now to BGG and I'm going to look up a list of board games published by Stefan Feld. Okay, and I'm just going to pick my favourite 3 from the list. This is actually one of those videos that I've been thinking of doing for the last year, is rating all of my Stefan Feld games. But the reason I don't want to do it is because there's new ones coming out all the time. So let's have a look. Here we go. Roma, not played. Rum and Pirates, not played. Year of the Dragon, yeah, really good. Notre Dame, I like it. Name of the Rose, not played. Arena, not played. Pillars of the Earth Builder Duel, not played. Macau, yeah. Luna, yeah. The Speerstadt, it happens. Never heard of it. Castles of Burgundy. Strasbourg, not played. Wow, a lot of these old ones I've not played. Trajan, yes. So definitely Trajan. Amerigo I really like. Let's see if that's going to be top 3. Notre Dame I think is underrated. Year of the Dragon is really good with the house rule, which was incorporated into the 2nd edition. Aquasphere I really like. It's just a bit fiddly. Oracle of Delphi, I didn't get on with that too much. Merlin, I think he's really good. Forum Trajanum, I thought was fantastic. Played it about 5 or 6 times, loved it, but I think there's a balance issue with it. If it weren't for the balance issue, great game. Bonfire, mentioned this earlier on. Is that going to become in my top 3? I'm not sure. Revolution of 1828 is sat over there on the shelf. It's unplayed. Castles of Tuscany, not played. Hamburg and Amsterdam. Hamburg is a re-implementation of Bruges. I really liked Bruges, but I saw the problems with it in terms of the randomness of the cards and the luck factor of getting the combos or not. Hamburg does fix that. So, top 3. Definitely Trajan. Oh, if you'd have said top 5, Trajan, Year of the Dragon, Luna. I think Luna's underrated. I do like Amerigo. Whether it's really my top 3 or not, I'd have to go back. And Forum Trajanum. Yeah, either Amerigo or Merlin, probably Amerigo. That was asked actually earlier on my Slack channel. There you go, top 3 Feld games, all 5. What rules book were you involved in that you were most proud of, says Dan Palmer. Now, a lot of people here are going to think that I'm going to say Robinson Crusoe 2nd edition, because that is regarded as one of my, magnum opus of rule books, because the original rule book for Robinson Crusoe was just a total and utter waste of time. And I am really pleased with the work that I did on the 2nd edition, because I didn't just write that rule book. I went through 4 years of questions on forums, not just BGG. I was searching through Polish rules forum questions and translating it to try and provide answers to every question that anybody had ever had for the 4 or 5 years that the game had been out. It was months of work and it took ages. And I hope they appreciate it because, yeah, I think I did a really good job on that. I'm very proud of that. The other rulebook which I'm also most proud of is for a much smaller game, and that is Legends Untold. Legends Untold was a successful Kickstarter game that came out last year, published by Inspiring Games, and I'm most proud of it because I got hired to write the rulebook for the game. And the designers approached me and they said, Paul, we've heard of you, we know your reputation, we'd like you to write the rulebook for this game. And they sent me this game, and this game is massive, right? The rulebook was huge. They threw the kitchen sink at this game, and it was like, whoa, this is like a role-playing game in a card game format, and it's got this and it's got that. They basically, first-time designers, and they'd thrown everything into it, and they'd made this world and they'd made this game that had a lot of good stuff going on. But as I was working on the rulebook, I was like, I was finding, with my game development hat on, I was finding issues. So I spoke to them and I said, I know you hired me to write the rulebook for this game, but I'm also a game developer, and are you interested in feedback that I've got about the game itself? And they were very, very open to that. And it was really good. And what ended up Because it could have been, no, Paul, we've hired you to write the rule book, go away. We've been playing this game for 2 years and it's fine. It wasn't that whatsoever. It was like, oh, well, Paul's got a good reputation in the games industry. We'll have a listen to what he says. And I started explaining some of the problems that I had with the game. And I was able to articulate the problems that I had in the game and explain them in such a way that they realised that the game did have a few problems that hadn't come out in the 18 months of testing that they'd done. And I was quite pleased in the fact that not only had I uncovered these problems, because I firmly believe, and I think I've spoken to Kevin since, and he said thank you, in that if the game would have been published with the rules as they were, people would have found those problems. Eventually, somebody would have found those issues and it would have been a blight on the game. The fact that I was bold enough to say, I think your game might have a few fundamental flaws in some of the rules, and then talk it through and then be open and then them listen. And I'm now listed as a developer of that game because I didn't just work on the rulebook. I actually worked on the rulebook and I helped fix some of these fundamental issues with the game. So if you've got the game and you're playing it and you're like, what fundamental issues? I don't know any fundamental issues. It's because they've gone, hopefully. And then there's always that nervous bit. The game got published and you sat there and you're like, oh, the game's been published. Is it going to be okay? And thankfully, the amount of positive feedback on the game and on the rulebook has been very rewarding for me and for the publisher to see. So yeah, I'm really proud of that. If that's coming across, it probably is. Gedson, are you keeping up with Marvel Champions LCG releases? No, absolutely not. The last one I got was Christmas. So it's been 8 months since I got any Marvel releases. Marvel Champions, great game. Absolutely love the game. Love playing it. Think the game's fantastic. Want to play it more. There's a couple of reasons why. The first one is time. I just don't have enough time at the moment to play all the games I want to. I should be prioritizing games that I really enjoy playing. And right now, certainly for the last couple of months anyway, I haven't had time to play games just for fun. And Marvel Champions would be a game that I would love to play more of because I think it's fantastic. I love the core mechanisms in the game. I think the theme's brilliant and I love the game. The other reason I've not kept up on it is, yeah, and I think I've mentioned this last time. Unfortunately, Fantasy Flight Games, Asmodee, whoever, have decided that they're not interested in supporting the game outside of the US. So whereas a number of US content creators have been given review copies of the product and are getting all the product and they're writing about it and making videos, I was also I've done, how many videos have I done for Marvel Champions? I've done 7, 8, 9 videos, and I was more than happy to carry on producing videos for that game to help promote the game. But the fact that Asmodee weren't able to get me any product, it's like, okay, so yeah, sure. The last packs I've bought myself, but part of me is thinking, look, if I'm going to be constantly making videos for you to help you promote your game, every other publisher supports you when you're doing that, and they weren't able to. And it's like, okay, so whilst I like the game and I'd like to play the game, part of me is thinking, why should I spend my time producing content for you when you're not going to support me back? Anyway, let's move on. Have I played Treasure Island, says Ross. No, I haven't. It's been played. It's been played here. I've seen it being played. I've heard the rulebook was bad, but I've heard the game is fun. It's one of those games that came out, people were talking about a bit, and then it just kind of fizzled away. It looked interesting, but yeah, I heard the rulebook wasn't that great. Any update on GridCon 2? The only update on GridCon 2 is that me and Vicky said at some point in the next, couple of months, we need to speak to the hotel. Everything is currently in place for November. We know as much as you do, but at some point, where are we now? August? Yeah, probably in September, we will drop a message to the hotel and say, look, what's happening? Because we don't know. We will run GridCon 2 if we are allowed to. That will be down to the hotel. If the hotel are not allowed to do it, we won't do it. Yeah, we'd love to do it. We don't want to miss another one. Beyond the Sun. Have you already seen this? No. Let's look it up. What is Beyond the Sun? Beyond I can't spell it. Beyond the Sun. I've just realised the time and I'm getting really hungry. We are going to wrap things up. So if I can ask you not to put any more questions in the chat, I will go through all of the questions that we've had so far. But if I can ask you not to put any more questions in. Beyond the Sun. Oh no, I did see this. This was yesterday. Yes, I saw it advertised yesterday. It's a new game by Rio Grande. And I looked at it and went, that looks pretty, and that's it. And then moved back to a rulebook. So yeah, I've seen it. I don't know much about it yet. Tabletop Closet, have you any thoughts on what makes a good reprint stroke new edition? I'm finding that the revised art for a few recent reworkings a bit of a step back. Yeah, and I think I know which ones you're thinking about there. And I shouldn't probably give my own opinion on that. But yeah, I'm absolutely in agreement with you. There are some games recently, and I can tell you games that I wasn't involved with, where I thought the new version was like, what was it? Castles of Burgundy, the new version of Castles of Burgundy. I look at it and I'm like, okay, the old one was very beige and it had like 3 different shades of brown, but the new one is just awful. So yeah, sometimes revised art doesn't mean better art, okay? And it is a shame when a new version of a game comes out and the new artwork is like, yeah, I don't like that. I like the old artwork. So have I got any thoughts on what makes a good reprint new edition? Yeah, updating the rulebook if it's not clear, updating the rules if it's not, updating the rulebook if it's not clear, and tweaking the game. So what Stefan Feld is doing with Hamburg and Amsterdam is he's taking an existing game and improving them. Now, Macau, I'm going to be really interested to see how he's going to improve Macau. Whereas Bruges and Hamburg for me is a definite improvement on Hamburg is a definite improvement on Bruges. I don't know about Amsterdam. I don't know much about it yet, so we will see. What are Mrs. Rules' top 5 favourite games? So, in no particular order, Gloomhaven, Tainted Grail, Unlock, Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective, and Time Stories. There you go. Yeah, they would have probably the ones I would have said. I would have probably put Exit in there as number 6. Right, okay, so yeah, so top 6 games, Gloomhaven, Tainted Grail, Unlock, Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective, and Time Stories. Tainted Grail because of the house rules? I mean, yeah. Tainted Grail with the core rules as printed, painful. Yeah, painful, and the grind was awful. But with our house rules and the story mode, we're really enjoying the game now. Juan says, what do you fancy, rugby or cricket? Neither. I'm not a big sports fan. The only sport I really follow is Formula 1. I watch the tennis when it's on at Wimbledon, but other than that, so rugby or cricket, neither for me, I'm afraid. I'm not interested in either of those. Radisson, do I have any information about what's going on with TMG? No. The Luna Deluxified Kickstarter has not yet shipped in North America, and no sign of a reprint on the shelves. I don't know. I've done some work with TMG in the past, but I haven't had any contact with them for months now. Not in a bad way, you know. It's not that I've been trying to contact them. I just haven't had any dealings with them at all about anything. So, right. Andre, can you tell a good war game? A good war game. It depends on your definition of a war game, because people will say Twilight Struggle is a war game, and other people will say Twilight Struggle is not a war game. I mentioned earlier on in the chat that I've not really got that much experience with war games as such. What I can tell you is that there are a few great Euro games which are kind of themed around war, and one of the ones that I played recently was Empire Divided, designed by David Thompson and Chris Marling, but it is a game set sort of after the Cold War. So yeah, I would have classed that as a war game, whereas I know other people would say that's definitely not a war game. It depends on your definition of a war game. Ollie Brom says, met you in Essen last year with Harold. Yeah, we joked about playing Age Night. Am I up for a game on Tabletop Simulator? Yeah, I mean, I've heard that there's a really good mod for Mage Knight on Tabletop Simulator, and yeah, I would be well up for that at some point. Harold is a patron supporter of mine, and at the moment, because my patron supporters are funding so much of what I do, I'm giving them something back. So if you are a patron supporter of mine and you are watching this and you are not on the Slack channel, please get on the Slack channel, because I don't want you missing out on stuff. But my patron supporters on the Slack channel are getting behind the scenes access to various playtesting, various rulebook work that I'm doing, and all sorts of extra stuff. So yeah, if you are a patron supporter, get on the Slack channel. And if my patron supporters wanted a game of Mage Knight with me, I would be very much up for that. It's just time. Time at the moment is a bit of a problem, and I'm hoping that's going to be sorted in a couple of months' time. But it's going to be a busy couple of months. Would you recommend Frosthaven over Gloomhaven? Yes, absolutely. I think Frosthaven has some things in there which most definitely improve on the Gloomhaven experience. Certainly the fact that you're not just collecting money now when you're on adventures, you're collecting resources, you're collecting wood and stone and things like that, and then you're bringing those back and you're crafting buildings. I like crafting. I love crafting in games. Isaac likes crafting in games, and that's something you can do in Frosthaven. I also believe he has fixed the scaling issue, whereas Gloomhaven tends to break down at the high level. So for example, when we first started playing Gloomhaven, we were playing on scenario level 0, so the normal difficulty, and even on a couple of scenarios we had to reduce it to -1 because the scenario was just so tough. Now that we're level 7, 8, 9, we're playing on scenario level +1 and it's still easy. And sometimes we've upped it to +2 and it hasn't felt like that much of a challenge. I've heard this from others. I wasn't sure whether to believe them or not. Now that we've got to those levels ourselves, it is a problem, and I've spoken to Isaac about it, and he says he's fixed that with Frosthaven. So yeah, Frosthaven definitely over Gloomhaven. How much do I like Lost Ruins of Arnak? I can't really answer that question because I'm on the development team. Okay, so I do a lot of work with CGE. They pay me to do development work on the game. I can't really say how much I like it, except it's really good. Just don't tell anybody I said that. Yeah, it is really good. If you don't believe me, ask my patron supporters, ask anybody who played in one of the games over the weekend. I did 4 demos of it over the weekend, and all of the feedback was positive. It's just really good. It's just a really good game. Am I going to be doing a video for Amsterdam? Yes. So the plan is, the arrangement that I made with Queen Games is that I would be producing one of my how to play videos for every game in the new Steffenfeld City collection. Now, there was some miscommunication about what I was doing for Hamburg. I thought I was going to be doing a how to play video, and what I got sent was a prototype which was still work in progress. So basically the arrangement I now have is, as soon as the first copy comes off the printer of Hamburg, it will come to me and I will create one of my how to play videos for the game. So not a tutorial and playthrough, I might do one of those as well, but a fully scripted how to play video, professionally edited, for every game in the Steffenfeld City collection. But they can only be done with the finished copies of the game. So I will be doing one. Right, that's everything for the questions. Thank you very much for this. I'm just going to go now to the responses to some of the shared questions from earlier on. So Angela, you were asking about King of Tokyo or King of New York. We have, Tony says King of New York. Brett says New York introduces too much that isn't needed, so therefore stick with King of Tokyo. Benjamin says King of Tokyo is straightforward, easy to pick up, and keeps it simple but fun. Kabuki Kid recommends King of Tokyo, more accessible, less setup. All Around the Board says King of New York. It has far more depth than King of Tokyo. Not only do you battle each other, but you also battle an army too. Tony says Tokyo, in short, sweet, and exactly what it needs to be. It doesn't need more depth. And Phil Dennis says 100% King of Tokyo, far more accessible and less confusing. And Gnome says Tokyo all the way. So most people have said King of Tokyo. The one person who didn't say King of Tokyo was All Around the Board, who said King of New York because it provides more depth. So I think it depends what you're looking for in a game. If you want something that's easy to pick up, accessible, quick, simple, go with King of Tokyo. That would be what I would recommend first. If you really like the game and you want more depth, then look into King of New York. But it sounds like King of Tokyo is the one that you should choose to start with. Right, let's wrap things up. Final 2 things. Board Game Geek, can you post the Geek Guild? Right, okay, there you go. Yeah, so Board Game Geek, guild number 2258, 2258. Join in on there. as I say, there is going to be a question. I'm probably going to post it tonight, which is the Mount Rushmore question. So that'll be on the guild, and make sure you join, but also then subscribe. And the second thing is the contest. Final shout out for the contest. There you go. This is great. This, yeah, you've got until Friday to enter the contest. We have, how many people have entered the contest so far? 56 people have entered the contest. I think that is almost more. Yeah, I think we've had 60, which was the max. So yeah, there's still time to enter the contest. If you're watching this live, enter the contest, and the secret word is pendulum. Okay, that is the word that you will need to enter the contest. Put your name, your email address, the word pendulum. Again, a massive thank you to all of my Patreon supporters. It is my Patreon campaign that funds these videos and a lot of the other videos that I am creating at the moment. It's only made possible through the support of my Patreon campaign. So if you are a Patreon supporter, it's your support that's making these possible. So thank you very much. Time. No? 7. Thumbs up. Oh, on the video. Yes. Also, on the video, please click that little thumb up. It does make a difference for the YouTube algorithms. Click the little thumbs up. And if you're able to leave a comment on the video as well, that's great, because all of that really helps the algorithms. And if I've said anything here that you've found of interest, share it with your friends if there's anything that I've said that you think might be of interest to them. And if anybody has found that podcast that I did talking about game development, I tell you what, I'll post it on the BGG Guild. Okay, I'll dig it out, I'll find it, and I'll post it on my BGG Guild, which is where I should have posted it anyway. So I'll do that. So if you want to hear me being interviewed about my role as a game developer, that will be on there. That's everything. Time for food. What are we having? We're not having anything for food tonight because Vicky was supposed to go shopping and make dinner, and we've been editing Unlock Box 8 all day. So Unlock, the series of Unlock games, Box 8 was going to print like first thing tomorrow morning, and Vicky, Rick and myself have been editing the text on all of those cards today, and it needed to be done today. Vicky finished that at about 4:30. So there's about 4:30. So there's been no time. So we're starving to death. Also that you can have a good set of Unlock scenarios with no typos in. We can't go for fish and chips again. Curry. We can go for curry. Let's have curry. Right. Anyway, we're all done. Then I'm going to do some painting. And depending on how this evening goes, last night, was it last night? What did I do last night? Yeah, last night I did an impromptu live stream of me playing the Batman Arkham Asylum computer game. Depending on how tonight goes, I might come back and do some more because it was fantastic. I loved it. Lots of people joined in the chat. So not going to promise anything because I might get downstairs and I might get really into my painting. But my plan is to come back up here about 10 o'clock and do another hour of live streaming. But it might not happen. Watch this space. For now, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you all soon. Take care, everybody. Play some good games, and I will see you on
Gaming Rules is proudly sponsored by Game Toppers, upgrading your gaming experience. Visit GameToppersLLC.com.